Today we are going to talk about the iPower ion motors. I've been running them for a while, and I basically wanted to do like a 90-day update and let people know how these motors have held up. Every time I post something on Instagram, I'll get a comment and people will ask me how I like these motors, and I say I like them a lot. These motors are fantastic. But I wanted to take a couple of minutes here to just explain that a little bit better. So I've been running the 2506 2450 kV on my kind of heavyweight 5S proximity basher. This one right here, it's a Dragon Teeth V2 prototype with replaceable arms, and it's kind of a beefy frame, but it flies super nice. And with these motors on 5S, you barely notice the weight, except when you toss it through the air. You can toss it like a really long ways because of the mass. But so yeah, I've been running these motors for about 3 months now, and I did break one after actually just like the first few weeks I had these. I broke one of the motors. I don't know if you can see that divot in the side right there, but I stuffed this into a granite wall at, I don't know, not top speed, but like pretty hard punch, probably 50 miles an hour or better. And it actually didn't bend the shaft, but it did bend the bell the tiniest bit, and it cracked one of the magnets right in half. And that's ultimately what caused its demise. I'm pretty sure I could actually just throw a new bell on this and it would be fine. So that was probably the worst crash that they've been, or definitely the worst crash that they've been through, although they've been through plenty of other crashes on ice and direct strikes with trees and logs and whatnot, and they've held up like really well. I've used motors from you name a brand, and I have probably tried their motors. There's a couple of newer ones out there that I haven't, but all the big names I have used and abused their motors, and there are some really nice motors out there that you can pay a lot of money for and not get any more than you're getting with these motors right here. And in some cases you're getting less. You're paying more for the name than you are for the actual quality of the product. Some motors perform really well, but the durability isn't there. And conversely, some motors are very durable, but they just don't have the performance. Some motors have tons of power and don't have the efficiency. Well, these guys did a lot of work on designing these motors for freestyle so that they had a good balance of efficiency and power, and topped off with amazing durability, and that's what they have succeeded in doing with this ion line of motors. Let's see, this motor right here is all scuffed up and dinged up. I crashed this on the granite actually hard this weekend for about 30 feet in the air. I think I posted a snapshot on Instagram of it maybe, but yeah, these motors are beat up pretty good, and they still sound really smooth. Bearings have held up. My point is anyway that the bearings have held up really well. They're using very high quality bearings, and it's 70-75 aluminum for the bell, and I think it's the same. I don't know. It might be a titanium shaft. I think it's 70-75 aluminum, which actually contains titanium. And in some cases, when a company says it's titanium, they actually mean that it's 70-75 aluminum, which has titanium in it. So And yeah, so they're super durable, and like not just the shaft and the bell, but almost more importantly, the bearings are really rugged, and they've held up really, really well. I've got some numbers here on the motors for people who like numbers. The 2506 comes in a 2100 kV, which measured at 2160. And on the HQ 5043 V1S on 4S, it's pulling 1337 grams of thrust at 33 amps. Now, for that low kV and the large stator, that's like almost underpropped, but not so as it would bother you, of course. But that's just incredibly efficient, considering that all the numbers on the thrust stand are exaggerated by, the amp numbers anyway, are exaggerated by 25 to 30%. So that 33 amps there becomes, not much more than 20 amps in the air. And those are momentary burst numbers as well. So basically, whatever it says on the thrust stand, your typical 35 amp ESC will be fine up to 60 amps on the thrust stand. Beyond that, you might want to go to a 40 or 45 amp. But okay, so moving on with the Cyclone 5046 on 4S, it's pulling 1454 at 39 amps. Again, that's pretty efficient right there. And that's a decent amount of thrust. And these are lower kV. This is like you would think really meant for kind of 6-inch props. And here we are at the HQ 6045 on 4S. It's pulling 1751 at 47 amps. That is fantastic. Those are really good numbers right there. And on 5S with the HQ 6045s, it's pulling 2146 at 64 amps. So you'd want to bump that up to maybe a 40 amp or 45 amp ESC just to be safe. Although again, those are highly exaggerated, and they're momentary burst amperage. So in the air, you're not really going to see near that many amps. So moving on, weve got the DYS 5045s on 4S pulling 1466 at 39 amps. On 5S pulling 1965 at 53 amps, and that's pretty nice, getting close to $2,000 on the thrust at only 53 amps. That's pretty killer. And then the HQ 7045 on 3S, they're pulling 1474 at 45 amps. And interestingly, on 4S, it's pulling 1903 grams of thrust at the exact same 45 amps as it did on 3S. So super efficient motors with really good thrust numbers for the 2100 kV 2506. Now the 2450 kV, which actually tested at 2330, so they're really more like a 2300 kV motor. On the HQ 5043 4S, they're pulling 1499 at 42 amps. So basically 1500 grams of thrust and a really low amp draw. That's super impressive numbers on those HQ 5043s. On 5S, it's pulling 1947 grams at 56 amps. Again, that's very reasonable amp draw. So that's a really good match. I've actually flown the 5043, 5045, and 5048 V1S on 5S on these exact motors, and they all work great. No issues with any of them. With the 5048s, on 5S, you're probably pulling close to 2200 grams of thrust, and I haven't killed a battery or anything. The motors don't get warm. They don't even get slightly warm on 5S. I would absolutely run these on 6S. Actually, I'm getting some 6S packs very soon here, so that I can be testing some new race motors that we're going to talk about shortly. But so moving on with the 2450 kV, which is actually 2330. The DYS 5045s are pulling 1604 on a 4S at 48 amps, so again, very efficient and tons of thrust. HQ 6045 on 4S are pulling 1813 at 56 amps, and the 7045s are pulling 1839 at 41 amps, both of those on 4S. And yeah, it's like super, just very, very impressive thrust numbers, but maintaining really, really good efficiency. So yeah, these are great freestyle motors, gotta love them. So let's move on to the 2207. I got some of those right here. The 2207, they look small next to the 2506. 2207 2500 kV, which measured at 2530. This is seriously, these are badass motors right here. Oh, that reminds me, the weight on the 2506 is like 43 grams, so they're pretty heavy motors, but so powerful that you really won't notice it. And on a freestyle or proximity rig, you're not worried about that as much anyway. So, and the 2207s are a bit heavy for a 22.7. They're coming in at 38 grams or 39 grams, I can't remember, but they're a little heavy. But these might be the most powerful 2207s out there. I actually went through all of the thrust tests I could find online for 2207 motors. Well, between Engineer X and Mini Quad Test Bench, and these appear to be the most powerful 2207 motors out there. So let's check out some of these numbers here. Oh, that one's done. The HQ 5043 V1S on 4S. This little motor right here is pulling 1674 grams of thrust at 47 amps. That's really impressive on a 4-cell to be pulling almost 1700 grams of thrust on a 5043. Now, they're not as efficient as these large stator motors are here, but still not too bad. 47 amps, that's not too bad. Now on 5S, Engineer X tested these on 5S and pulled 2173. So 2,173 grams of thrust at 63 amps. So you're starting to get a little high. Again, that's you know, it's not going to be that bad in the air, but you might potentially, with these motors right here, in an oh shit situation, pull over 45 amps or close to 50 amps and probably fuck up a battery, which I did. I put these on one of my Dragon Teeth V2 prototypes and ran them on 5S with the 5048, and I puffed a battery in like a minute and a half. So I don't recommend these for 5S unless you're running 5040s, or maybe maybe the 5043s are okay. But yeah, they're really made for 4S, and they're incredibly powerful on 4-cell. I don't even know why you would want to run these on 5S really, unless you were just going for top speed. But so let's move on. DYS 5040x4 quad blade prop on 4S, pulling 1720 grams of thrust at 51 amps. Okay, so camera died on me. Where were we? The DYS. So moving on with the HQ 5545. For those of you who are using the 5.5-inch props on 4S, these babies are pulling 1745 grams of thrust at 61 amps. So again, you're probably looking at moving up to a 40 amp ESC at this point, but that's, like, these days not a big deal. You can get 40, 45, 50 amp ESCs that are not that big and not that heavy these days, and that's no problem. And then with the Cyclone 5046 on 4S, it's pulling 1769 grams of thrust at 56 amps. So like those Cyclone 5046 Cyclones are actually very efficient on these motors. So yeah, as you can see, the 2207 2500 kV that measured at 2530 are just super beastly 2207s. Very, very powerful motors. And these numbers, it reminds me, like I've been flying mini quads for a couple of years, like quadcopters for like four years or so, but I got into FPV like 2 years ago. And I can remember when I was researching stuff for my first build, I can remember, I think it was the first Emax red bottoms that were like bragging about producing a kilogram of thrust. Like that was a really big deal a couple years ago, you know, and then 6 months after that it was 1200 grams of thrust. You know, this is on a 4-cell battery, of course, and now we're seeing numbers like close to 1800 grams of thrust on a 4-cell, and not on just some like redonkulous 2990 kV whatever. It's, you know, these are fairly efficient motors to pull almost 1800 grams of thrust at 56 amps on the thrust stand. If you had told someone that 2 years ago, they would have laughed. So that is how far motor tech has come in the last couple of years since I started flying. It's really neat. Can't wait to see what the future brings. Okay, so that is our 90-day review of the Ion line of motors from iflight RC. And all in all, these are honestly some of the best motors, maybe the best motors that you can buy for under $20. Yeah, by the way, these, the 2207, the most beastly 2207s, are $16.99 a piece. And I think they're slightly cheaper if you buy a set of 4. And the 2506 are $19.99 a piece. And they are, I believe it's like $75 for a set of 4. So yeah, I don't think you can beat these motors for the price when you take into account the power, efficiency, and the durability. I think these Ion motors are unbeatable. So what's next from iflight RC? Well, there is something coming up soon here that I'm pretty excited about. As we all know, MultiGP has opened up their races to up to 6S batteries now. Which is pretty cool, and then all of the motor manufacturers have been coming out with lower kV versions of their race motors, and iflight is no different. They are working on a new line of high-end race motors with some new stator technology. They are considerably lighter than these right here. I've got a little bit of information on them right now. For instance, like the Ion motors, they are going to have these nice set screws, no circlip or C-clip or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, set screw, single strand windings, NSK bearings, really nice high quality precision bearings, N52H arc magnets. For those of you who don't know, the H indicates what type of temperatures it can withstand before it starts to lose its magnetic properties, and an H indicates that it's good for up to 248 degrees Fahrenheit, and I think we can all agree if your motors are breaking 248 degrees Fahrenheit, you've got bigger problems. So really nice magnets going in there, and the first size they're going to be releasing is a 2306. It comes in at 32 grams, and there are going to be various different KVs. I don't know the exact numbers yet, but my recommendations were 1880 for the 6S and 2160 for the 5S and 2660 for the 4S motors, but we'll see what they end up landing on once they build some and test some. But actually, they are sending me some of the 5S and 6S prototypes to test. I believe the first one they're coming out with will be just the 4S motor, but quickly to be followed by 5S and 6S kV appropriate motors for racing. So that is super exciting. I've even seen a picture of what they look like, and they're multicolored. Like the one I saw was black and green, and I think there's going to be different color options and maybe different colors for the different KVs as well. So they're really badass looking motors. I'm very excited to see these. Expected to be released, at least the first one is expected to be released this month, the month of March. So it won't be too long, and we'll get to see the next offering from iflight RC in the motor category. Yeah, super exciting. Alright, so I think I've probably rambled on long enough. Is there anything I've forgotten? No? Okay, well, very good. Alright, thanks for joining me, and I will catch you next time. Peace.